Very excited to get to chat with you, Jessica, for
Thank
Quiz Lady.
you.
I mean, I was telling Jen earlier, this is probably the feel good of the movie of the year for me.
Oh,
It was such a heartwarming, such a funny ride. Now, in the past decade, we've seen you work a lot on television, but it's been a while since you've made a film. What about Jen's script really spoke to you and want to get in the director's chair for this one?
yeah. I mean, I think what I loved is that it was a comedy about sisters, which I realized we don't really see that much of. So there was something in that sibling relationship, the idea that your sibling knows you better than you want to remember sometimes. So it was that. And there also the game show idea was really, really fun. And she's just a very funny writer too. So it was that balance of that heart and also the humor. Also, I knew when I read it that Awkwafina and Sandra Oh were already attached. So I had the pleasure of already imagining them in the roles. So yeah, I didn't take a lot of convincing. I was just, yeah, please, me.
I can only imagine. Yeah, it's every element says
Yeah,
yes for you
yeah.
and already. Now with speaking of Aquafina and Sandra Oh, one thing I love about them is that they play against type very much in this movie with their roles. And I'm curious, obviously they were very excited to tackle their roles by signing on before you came on board. But what was it like working with them, on the days to really ensure that they didn't maybe pull back too much and really lent into their characters?
Yeah, I would say, especially with Sandra, there's no holding back. Like she really wanted to push this character, and like she said, she liked the idea of playing a very inappropriate character who is very self-serving, and so it takes a while to kind of get those layers and to see what she's actually been to her sister, which is much more nuanced than it seems in the beginning. So with her. There was a lot. She does a lot of preparation, and we had like a year to work together before we started shooting with her, with Aquafina, and with Jen workshopping together. So I think we really were able to have the building blocks of the working relationship, and also being on the same page with where the story lived. So all that worked. That said, they're very different in their processes, but on set, I think they're both very much wanting to keep that moment of when the cameras are rolling, keep it spontaneous, to keep it genuine, to keep in the moment. And that's all about them being in tune with each other and really playing off each other. It was really cool to watch. And I know this is a very long answer, but I remember Aquafina said a cool thing where she said she really felt like she was actually related to Sandra. And I think that really comes across.
That's incredible. I mean, yeah, their bond is so well developed throughout this film. It
Yeah.
felt genuine. And that actually was going to go into my next question, which was about improv, because obviously Aquafina has a comedy background already. But, how much room was there for them to just live in the moment and play off script versus sticking to Jen's writing?
Yeah. So because we spent a lot of time on the script together, everybody absorbing it, we always shot what was on the page first. And then there would always be room to play once we got that. So there were some scenes that lent themselves more to improv than others, say the charades round. There was just a lot of stuff flying back and forth. But in every scene, though, we would always make sure to do justice to the words, and then we could play and order off the menu.
I love that. That's a good balance because, I mean, especially when you have someone like Aquafina, you want to let her loose occasionally.
Oh yeah, and she always there's just always jokes bubbling on the surface and physical comedy, and she just loves things to bounce against. And sometimes I would just really not want to call cut because I was just enjoying it.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to talk about was creating the game itself. I mean,
Yeah.
it feels like a nice departure from Jeopardy while still having some roots there. What was it like finding a unique approach to creating this game show for the film that didn't feel too much like it was pulling from real world shows?
Sure. I think what we liked is the idea is that it was a smart show that was also trying to be friendly, right? Terry McTeer, the host, is always like, learning's fun. That's kind of his idea. But it's also a show where you see that over time, the producers have thought, we better jazz this up. We better have like this giant coin spinning at the end and the audience chanting and lights. And so you can see that that's how that show has evolved. So we wanted to make it a familiar show, but have this element at the end where there's something that's less controlled. And that's the charades idea, where Anne cannot do it alone. And so leaving the door open for her to need her sister. So it was that kind of construction that really, I think, mirrored what we wanted to do with their relationship. We couldn't do that, I think, with existing game shows. It needed to be created.
Well, it's a very fresh spin. I would be surprised if somebody doesn't try and find a way to make their own version in real life someday.
Right.
Another thing I loved about this film in regards to both Anne and Sandra Oh's characters is just it doesn't feel often that we get to see Asian American women take the lead in a comedy and given the spotlight. Obviously Everything Everywhere All at Once sort of made that a new thing, but this was done well before that. What was it like getting to help bring that new form of representation and authenticity to the screen?
Yeah, I think we were really excited about the idea of the sisters' identity being layered into everything they did, but not having them have to explain themselves, right? It wasn't like we needed to have them have a monologue where we go, oh, we understand their experience now. Now we can proceed with the story. So that's part of the humor too, where occasionally Jenny will kind of manipulate a moment by sort of gatekeeping the Asian American experience. We had a lot of fun with that. So it was almost like we, using that kind of humor, that sort of self-referential humor, felt like a little step forward for me, at least, in terms of the depiction of Asian Americans on screen, being able to sort of have those tongue-in-cheek kind of jokes. And it was really a lot of fun to find those moments.
It does go a long way to making it feel like a universal story as much as one about Asian American women. So I love that balance. Another thing I love about this film, I grew up with 2.5 Men. So seeing Holland Taylor as the neighbor was just such a delight. And it feels like a character that's both wholly her in what she's played before, but also something very new. So what was it like finding her to play this part and then discussing the layers to her?
Yeah. So I've worked with Holland a few times. Absolutely love her. And so in this, her question was, well, so is she someone who hates life? What is her deal? And I said that, the secret to Francine is that she feels like she's got all the answers. She's the only one who's not a sucker. She's figured it out, like, life's just not worth bothering with. So to me, it's like she represents the ghost of Anne's future, right? If you just keep living in your little world, the insulating layers get thicker and thicker. And so is that where Anne wanted to be? So that was kind of the idea for Holland. And also, she's just, I love that her humor, it's in timing. It's also physical. There's just so much subtlety in the ways that she is funny in this. So you could look and think she's just completely playing it straight, which she kind of is, but she's so skilled that these little moments, she could just twist them a little bit and then they become hilarious.
They truly do. I can't think of a moment I wasn't laughing when she was on screen because she's just so great in that way. I see I'm almost out of time, so before I let you go, I did also want to ask about Paul Rubenson's cameo in this movie, especially now that he has unfortunately passed. What was it like getting to work with him and how did the idea for him come about?
So Jen had this great idea of a doppelganger for Francine's crush, Holland Taylor's crush. And we were really excited about the idea of, would Paul Rubens want to do something like this? And one day, Sandra just, reached him. She just called him. She came out. I was like, I got Paul on the phone. And he was just so delightful. He wanted to come out and play with us. And everyone was so excited. Pee-wee's on set. And it just is like a reminder of how much joy he brought to people. And we had this magical, it was our first day of shooting. And it just felt like, this is going to be good. We had Pee-wee. And no one knew that he wasn't well. And it's a very, it's just this lovely memory that now is quite bittersweet. But yeah, I mean, I could not imagine the film without him.
I can't either. It's such a fun little send off for him, if anything.
Yeah.
And the film as a whole, like I said at the start, I loved it. I cannot wait for people to get the chance to see it and to spread the word about it. So, Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.